Good evening and welcome to Black Talk Radio News with Scotty Reed. It's Friday night. It's been a very long week for me. I don't know about you, but I would say it's been a productive week. It is April 27, 2012. We did have a program scheduled for you tonight to bring you some updates on the Davontae Sanford case. And some things concerning the facility that he is incarcerated at. We have been reporting that he wrote a letter. We brought his mom on the program. She read the letter where he's being abused by prison guards, and I have since learned since that program that there is an investigation of that facility, but we are not able to have our guests join us tonight. We have set something up for Sunday, and that'll be a pre-recorded broadcast, and which will be broadcast later next week. But it is something that we certainly intend to stay on top of, as we always have since we first heard about the tragic story of Davontae Sanford. But tonight I want to talk about something. It's not the first time I've heard of it. If you missed that program we did with Ed Forchion, the New Jersey Weed Man, or NJ Weed Man, the concept of jury nullification came up, and I had heard it a couple of times before he brought that up, and that's going to be a strategy in his upcoming trial on May 1st, where he's facing marijuana possession charges in New Jersey, and he's going to argue that the law is wrong, that the law that criminalizes marijuana in New Jersey, and we're talking about state laws, he is not facing any federal charges, but the state laws in New Jersey which criminalize marijuana state that it has no medicinal value. But then on the other hand, in 2010, they legalized medicinal marijuana. And so his argument is going to be to the jury that you must vote not guilty because both laws cannot be correct. And again, he is a California medical marijuana patient who was visiting family in New Jersey, where he has also maintained a residence. So they just got me, really looking into jury nullification. And so that's something that I want to talk about for tonight's program. And we'll also be playing some of the best in old school hip hop and R&B. So, kind of like just laid back tonight, but still want to bring you some information. So I looked up the term jury nullification on the internet in preparation for this program. And just to give you an idea of what it is, let me just read from this Wikipedia entry. Now, jury nullification is a constitutional doctrine which allows juries to acquit criminal defendants who are technically guilty but who do not deserve punishment. It occurs in a trial when a jury reaches a verdict contrary to the judge's instructions as to the law. A jury verdict contrary to the letter of the law pertains only to the particular case before it. If a pattern of acquittals develops, however, in response to repeated attempts to prosecute a statutory offense, this can have the de facto effect of invalidating the statute. A pattern of jury nullification may indicate public opposition to an unwanted legislative enactment. And so, I talk a lot about the drug war and the fact that our prisons are filled with nonviolent drug offenders, or what other people also call a victimless crime. And President Obama, when he was called out recently, and he gave an interview to Rolling Stone, and he's like, ruling out marijuana legalization. When he was pressed on it at the Summit of the Americas by several Latin American countries who want to end the drug war and legalize drugs, the Obama administration basically just, upped the ante or upped the bribe and said, well, we'll send you more money. And when I look at and hear stories about, closing this school or closing that school because we don't have funding to keep it open, or we're laying off teachers because we don't have the money, or we are ending after school programs or adult education programs because we don't have the money. And then I look at all the money that we waste in this country, taxpayer money being wasted on prosecuting a unwinnable war. And I just think that we have to do something. Now, I think I've always said that all options should be on the table is what I what I was trying to say. Yeah, all options should be on the table when it comes to liberating our people, when it comes to bringing an end to the drug war. Well, yeah, we should be trying to overturn these laws or nullify, well, I guess, pass like marijuana legalization and stuff like that. And there's a number of states where that's going to be on the ballot. But I just feel like, especially when it comes to marijuana, a plant, a herb, something that grows out of the ground, has got its name weed because it is a weed. A plant that could be used for not only recreational use, but also in a variety of industrial products, biofuels. And we talked about that on the program on Wednesday night with James Mooney. And it just doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense that we should have prohibition of cannabis in this country. And until, the legislatures get in line with the people, because over 70% of people in most polls feel that marijuana should be legal. Now, we have a partnership with Law Enforcement Against Prohibition, and their position is, all drugs should be legal. But I'm a realist, and not to say that I disagree with their approach. I think, though, it will be a lot easier to make marijuana legal than, any other type of drug, because it's a harmless plant. No one's ever died of an overdose from marijuana. And so, considering, the obstacles that we face, our President Obama, when you look at Congress, and so you look at the state legislatures, so if they don't move to end these draconian, freedom-hating laws, then what we can do is, as an individual, is, get on these juries and vote not to convict people of non-violent, victimless drug crimes. And I just don't think enough people, again, I'm one of those people that's just now being educated about jury nullification. And so throughout this broadcast, I'm going to share with you several recent stories or that are examples of jury nullification. And in the future, I'm going to start scheduling people who really are knowledgeable in jury nullification. I found several organizations out there, and we're going to work to bring them on here and educate people on the power of the jury. Some of the things I heard is like the last line of defense when you have a government that is raining down tyranny upon the people. And when you have the largest prison population on the planet, and the majority of those people are in prison for nonviolent crimes, making them, in my opinion, political prisoners, something has to be done. And we, the people, have the power. We can either be a part of the solution, or we can continue to be part of the problem. And quite honestly, I want to be with you. We are the problem, especially when it comes to these jury trials. And we're just helping them to fill up these prisons, and we're just helping the 1% who's buying up these prisons and prisoners. Okay, they are buying the prisoners. When a private corporation takes over a prison, they're also taking ownership over those prisoners. And then they are going to put those prisoners to work and make a profit off of them. That's slavery. Nobody should be in prison, in my opinion, for a victimless crime. So, definitely is something I think that is worthwhile. We also set up a Facebook page called Occupy the Jury Box, where I will do my best to gather all stories pertaining to jury nullification and posting information related to jury nullification, because this is something we can do. This is something we can definitely do. And if we want change, then we got to be the change. We got to change. We got to do everything that's in our power to bring an end to this prison plantation. And through jury nullification, I feel like that is a viable option. So I'm gonna go ahead and kick off some music. This is the Black Sun, A Long Road Ahead, and then we'll come back and we'll share some stories about jury nullification with you. You're listening to Black Talk Radio News with Scotty Reed. This program airs Monday through Friday, starting at 10 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time, and is also simulcasted on NewVibeRadio.com. And we're back. You're listening to Black Talk Radio News with Scotty Reed. And so the first story that I want to bring to you comes from out of LA, and it's pertaining to the Occupy LA movement. And you had, it's Carmen Trutanich versus the Occupy LA, and this is posted in the blog section of LAweekly.com. Says that the case against Steve Lederman should have been easy to prove. Lederman, 38, was one of the Occupy LA protesters who refused to leave City Hall Plaza after the LAPD ordered everyone to disperse on November 30th. Lederman, a veteran of political demonstrations, locked arms in a circle of protesters. He was ultimately carried out by police and charged with failure to disperse, a misdemeanor. But after a 3-day trial last week, a jury of his peers found him not guilty. Now, I'm wondering, why did they even take 3 days for this trial? Trials do cost money. And how did that happen? He's actually sitting there. He's not making any attempt to leave, said Jason Marcus, Lederman's public defender. The only way you can look at the verdict is jury nullification. Almost 300 people were arrested the night of the LAPD raid on the Occupy LA camp. City Attorney Carmen Trutanich filed misdemeanor charges on about 50 of them, mostly those who had prior criminal records. So far, most cases that have gone to a jury have resulted in convictions, with the defendants generally being sentenced to community service. Lederman's case is the only one, at least so far, that has resulted in an acquittal. Another case was dismissed due to a hung jury. These are bogus cases. They should let them go, Lederman said in an interview this week. I was on city property and voicing my grievances to officials, which is what that park is designed for. Lederman's trial was held downtown, and a jury pool drew in residents of liberal enclaves like Echo Park and Silver Lake. Marcus, the public defender, said he was surprised that the prosecutor, Deanna Aisman, did not exclude more people from the jury, including a Silver Lake woman who said she was involved in roller derbies. She left some people who she should never have left on the jury, Marcus said. The jury was great. Aziesman did not return a call seeking comment. At trial, Marcus attempted to show that the protesters couldn't hear the dispersal order. Lederman did not testify. Lederman, who spoke with the jurors after the verdict was read, believes they were turned off by the LAPD's Hollywood showboating. They didn't need to come in with stormtroopers and waste a bunch of money the way they did, Lederman said. The city wanted to crush the movement. Now, so this is a case where jury nullification was used to protect a person's First Amendment right to file grievances with their government. Freedom of expression, freedom to assemble peacefully, and that is what they were doing. And so, although, most of the juries convicted most of these people, and I got some thoughts about that, but, in this particular case, the jury said, no, we're not going to convict him. No, we're not. And that's all it takes. All it takes is principled individuals who don't want to be tools, who don't want to be lackeys of the government to be a tool of oppression. All they have to do is vote not guilty. A person can't be punished. A juror cannot be punished for voting not guilty, even though, according to the law, that person may technically be guilty. And what you're doing is, instead of judging a person, you're judging a law. And again, how can we complain about our taxes? How can we complain about we don't have funding for this, we don't have funding for that? And then we're sitting up here spending all this money on prosecuting nonviolent drug offenders and then putting them in prison for a number of years. It makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. And you know, people need to wake up and they need to start standing up to tyranny. And this is a way, by nonviolent means, to stand up and say, no, we're not going to let you target our black brothers and sisters. No, we're not going to let you target anyone who hasn't harmed another individual, who hasn't broken any other laws that you want to put away for 20-something years for simply distributing marijuana or whatever. You know, the government is not really trying to stop drugs from coming into this country because it's a big old money racket. If they were successful in stopping drugs from coming into this country, which they can't, there's no way you can stop, you know, marijuana. Marijuana's grown right here in the United States. It's a weed. It can grow basically in all 50 states. But see, the goal isn't to stop people from using drugs. The goal is to lock people up for using or selling drugs, even if they, you know, didn't harm another individual, even if they only made transactions with adults. I don't see how we can justify this law, these drug laws. I don't see how we can justify the drug war. And when we participate in the justice system as jurors, then if we vote to convict, then in my opinion, we're part of the problem. We have become tools of the oppressor. And so all it takes is just one. You don't have to sit there and argue and convince all the other juries that you're right or anything like that. All you had to do was say not guilty. You ain't got to give a reason or a rhyme or anything, no explanation. Just say not guilty. You know, now if you want to make a statement after the trial to send a message to other people that, hey, we need to stop this. We need to stop this madness. We can no longer afford to keep locking up all of these people. If somebody wants to use drugs, then, you know, that's them. We ain't stopping people from drinking themselves to death and you know, doing damage to their liver or anything like that. We haven't criminalized cigarette smoking, although we know cigarettes are very, very harmful. But then you want to lock people up for using other substances. It makes no sense. If you want to help people, you know, you should be trying to help people, especially addicts. You should be trying to help them if they have a problem. You should be treating it like a health issue, not punishing them, because I don't see where in the Constitution that this drug war prohibition is constitutional. I just really don't. I don't see it. I don't see it. All right, so I'm going to keep the music flowing. This is some KRS-One. Then we'll come back and we'll share another story of jury nullification with you. And so remember, we got a Facebook page now called Occupy the Jury Box. We got to inform people that they have this constitutional right to vote not guilty and stop helping these people fill up these prison plantations, the new slave plantations of the 21st century. You're listening to Black Talk Radio News with Scotty Reed.
Your hands, everybody! If you
You are tuned in to the Black Talk Radio Network.
You're listening to Black Talk Radio News with Scotty Reed. This article came out earlier in March 9th, 2012. Jury reaches verdict in first Occupy protester case. This is coming from KCCI.com in Des Moines, Iowa. A Polk County jury reached a verdict in the first trespassing trial for an Occupy Iowa protester. The jury found Ed Fallon not guilty of trespassing. Fallon was charged with trespassing on the State House grounds. He was one of the Occupy Iowa protesters who refused to leave the grounds after authorities said they violated an 11 o'clock p.m. curfew. Jury, come on now, think about that. Jury Amy Mays, I guess that's how you say her name, on Mayers. Juror Amy Mayers told KCCI's Amanda Lewis that the decision was a matter of putting the U.S. Constitution above a state-imposed curfew. She said 4 jurors were on board right away, but it took some time to convince the other 2 jurors. So here's a woman who took it upon herself to convince the other jurors to vote not guilty. You know, this reminds me of a cousin, one of my cousins, who is still, trying to get out of some mess that happened in Maryland. My cousin, I'm not going to say his name, but he has served in the Air Force, was licensed to carry a firearm in the state of Maryland. He got into an altercation with somebody. Was a case of road rage. He said this person was trying to, intimidate him on the highway and run him over and all of that. And so, he pulled his weapon. He didn't point it at the guy, nothing like that. He just pulled his weapon out the trunk. And, so anyway, he ended up getting charged with violating some of Maryland's laws. And anyway, he was arguing during his trial that, the Constitution trumps Maryland's law. And then he was even saying Maryland's Constitution gave him the right to carry a firearm. According to the statutes that he was charged under, they were saying like, the only way that you can travel with a gun is if, you taking it to a gun range and back. It has to be in your house or your place of business. In other words, you can't ride around with your weapon in your car. And so anyway, he argued that the Constitution, trumps that state statute. And, the jury almost let him go. If it was not for what I would call some judicial misconduct on the part of the judge, when the jury couldn't come to a verdict, he told them, can't y'all just get me something? Can't you convict them on this? That's not a judge's job. That's the prosecutor is the one who argues for a conviction, not the judge. But the judge wanted to convict this black man so bad, he begged the jury right there in the courtroom to come back with something, with a partial conviction, because they acquitted him of some of the other charges. And so now, he's still fighting that through appeals and everything. So that kind of reminds me of that case. If we find that a situation is unjust, if we find that, a defendant is not getting justice, that the law in itself is wrong, then we don't have to convict these people. Think about it. Again, I'm going to keep bringing up the cost that how much it costs to house these people. for non-violent drug crimes. Non-violent drug crimes, and then you worried about teachers losing jobs. You worried about after-school programs shutting down. You don't have funding to keep the libraries open, but you steadily building prisons. And again, the vast majority of these prisons are filled with non-violent drug offenders. And so I feel like by occupying the jury box and through jury nullification, that, we can do some damage to this government tyranny that's enslaving all of these people, and it's for profit. It's not to protect them from themselves. So yeah, let's keep it rolling with some more Dead Prez. This is Politricks.
This is Ron Hayes with Hood News, and you're listening to the Black Talk Radio Network. Stay tuned.
And we're back. You're listening to Black Talk Radio News with Scotty Reed. And so, you heard Malcolm X talking about people and invisible movements in the black community, and people doing whatever means necessary to protect themselves. And, in case you haven't looked around, again, we incarcerate more of our citizens than any country on the face of this earth for non-violent drug crimes. I mean, do you really think that somebody should be in jail or prison for using any kind of drug, for using marijuana, for using heroin? Again, who are they victimizing? They're victimizing themselves. Well, you might say, well, drug addicts break into people's houses and they steal this and they steal. Well, you know what? I'm not going to sit up there and try to say that some drug addicts don't do those things. But guess what? There's laws to handle burglary, vandalism, whatever. You can charge them for those crimes. It shouldn't be a crime if somebody want to ingest something. Come on. Do we lock up people for trying to commit suicide? No, we don't. We get them medical help. And if anything, if a person's addiction is out of control to the point that they can't function, we ought to be providing more research or resources for them to get the help that they need. Because they're certainly not getting the help that they need through prison, by being in prison. And then once they get out of prison, well, now they're stuck with felonies. They lose rights. It's hard to get a job. Can't get federal loans to go to school. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. But yet we do it every day. There's somebody sitting on a jury sending these people to prison for decades. I read a story about here in Charlotte, North Carolina. You had a college student. Him and his buddy had a marijuana ring. It was said that they, had raised something like $1 million from the sale of marijuana. And they were it was like one of the guys was in California. He would send the guy marijuana through the mail who was a student. This is a student now. And college student, send him the money. Send him the weed. The guy sell the weed. Then he deposit the money in the bank. The guy in California withdraws the money out the bank. Think they were said to be used in Bank of America. But guess what? I wrote in the comment section of that story on CharlotteObserver.com, because in 2011, I believe, it was 2011, about January, where Wachovia Bank executives entered into a deferred prosecution agreement with the U.S. Justice Department for laundering $1 billion in drug money that they got through the currency exchange houses. And, you think any of those bank executives got charged individually with a crime? No, they did not. Do you think any of them, ended up in prison? Well, of course not, since they were never even charged with a crime. All they had to do was sign this agreement to better watch the money that's going through their system and pay $150 million fine. So they got to keep the other $850 million and suspected laundered drug money. But then here this kid is getting 20. They gave him 20 years. 20 years. It just doesn't make any sense. I want to continue reading about that last story I was telling you about in Iowa. Mayor said that the jury decided Fallon was justified in being on the grounds for the purpose of exercising his First Amendment rights. We just came to agreement that Mr. Fallon was exercising his right to peaceably assemble. He wasn't breaking any laws. He had a right to be on public grounds, said mayors. Fallon said he would not be going back to the State House grounds Friday night. He said October was a time to act. Now is a moment to sit back and see what other juries decide. Fallon said he is thrilled with the verdict. It feels incredible, said Fallon. I'm excited about the positive aspect of this in terms of the freedom of expression and the First Amendment. Polk County Attorney John Sarscone said the jury did the best they could with the instructions they were given by the court. So again, you don't have to vote guilty. Many of these laws are in conflict with the First Amendment. Many of these laws are in conflict with the Constitution. If you look back at alcohol prohibition, they had to pass a constitutional amendment to prohibit alcohol. Where's the constitutional amendment prohibiting marijuana? Where's the constitutional amendment prohibiting any kind of drug? So again, don't get me wrong. I'm not sitting up here advocating for anybody to use any kind of drugs whatsoever. But at the same time, I'm being realistic. People have been using substances for years. Not just years. I meant to say centuries. They have been using it for thousands of years, especially natural plants like marijuana. And then who is Nixon to come along, or these other people during the 1930s in the United States to come along and say, well, we're going to outlaw this. We don't want y'all smoking this or smoking that. Well, it ain't because they didn't want them smoking it. They wanted to lock them up. We've done programs in the past with members of law enforcement against prohibition. They outlawed heroin so that they could target the Chinese immigrant who was coming over here, getting jobs on the railroad. And so you had some racist white people who didn't want these immigrants to have these jobs, so they, passed laws to criminalize substances that they knew these people used and then locked them up. Same thing done with Mexican immigrants that was coming here in the 1930s, using marijuana. The drug war is racist. It's very racist. And for us, for black people to not want to be on these juries, number one, they don't want us on the jury to begin with. And that's a story I'm working on as in North Carolina, the Racial Justice Act has finally resulted in a inmate on death row being able to prove that racism played a role in the selection of his jury. And so now his death sentence has been converted to life in prison. But the underlying issues is the discrimination to keep black people and brown people off of juries. And then I started thinking about it further. Here in North Carolina, they use either your driver's license. If you got a driver's license, I don't know about state ID, but if you have a driver's license or you're registered to vote, that's determines where they get the names from for the jury pool. Then they say they randomly pick these people, randomly choose them. And so I'm still investigating the process. I don't know, how do you randomly choose people? But the thing is that information, all of that information that they use to determine the makeup of a jury pool includes your race. Isn't your ethnicity recorded on your driver's license and your state ID? Now, it's been a long time since I registered to vote, cause I don't, I've lived in the same place for so long. You don't have to keep registering to vote over and over, again, but I'll have to check. But I do believe it does have my race, my ethnicity on there. And so is that a way also to exclude people from the jury pool? Again, we should be fighting to be on these juries because we are the #1 ethnic group in this country that's being targeted for incarceration through these drug laws. And if we can fight to get on these juries, we can then use jury nullification and vote not guilty for nonviolent drug crimes and quit locking up people. Quit sending people to the prison plantation. The drug laws do more harm in destroying families than actual drugs do. And that's the truth. That's just the flat out truth about it. I mean, we are ruining lives through these drug laws. And then when you look at it, in every country that has decriminalized drugs or legalized them in some aspect, drug use actually goes down. The violence is eliminated because you no longer have that black market where you have these gangs fighting over turf to sell drugs. So, it doesn't make sense. Fighting, yes, we should look at overturning this legislation, but until then, what we can do is occupy the jury box. Occupy the jury box and vote not guilty for nonviolent drug crimes. Well, that's my program. Again, check out the Facebook page, Occupy the Jury Box. I will be posting all the stories I come across that involve jury nullification, and I will do my best to bring on more people that are more qualified to speak to this issue because I'm still educating myself on it. All right, so occupy the jury box, vote not guilty for nonviolent drug crimes. We're going to close it out with some Public Enemy, Fight the Power.
Playback.